This is the Milo Beasley Show. This is the Milo Beasley Show. There's only one thing you need to know. This is the Milo Beasley Show. And now, here's your host, Milo Beasley.
And welcome to the Milo Beasley Show. We're getting super close to the holiday season, and if you're anything like me, then you are watching Christmas movies every single night. And if you are, then you may recognize our next guest. Please help me welcome. You may recognize her from Elf as New York One reporter, Charlotte Denon. Please help me welcome Claire Lautier. How are you? How are you doing?
Oh, Milo, life is very interesting. Everyone who's watching, I don't normally sit in the dark for interviews, but I live in France now, and it's nighttime here, and we've got no power. Our electricity is out, and this just happened today. And I've got some amazing, handy friends who are over here taking my electrical boxes apart, trying to find the problem. And I got to tell you, it's been one of those days. So here I am sitting in my car with the little overhead lights on, very flattering lighting, to join Milo on the show. But we thought it might be funny for you guys who are watching.
Absolutely. Well, I do again want to thank you for spending your time. I guess you just have other people, like, can you go fix that? I'm just going to go be in my car for a while.
Yeah, well, I know. I was like, I can't stick around in the dark and the cold to watch you guys work. So I exited, but I'm hoping they're going to have some good news for me and we'll have some power tonight.
So how long have you been without power today?
Since about 9:30 this morning.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, well, I escaped to do my work in the library, but there's not a lot you can do without power these days, right? I mean, you got to be able to plug in your devices, and life doesn't stop. So fingers crossed.
What's the temperature? How cold is it?
It's about, let's see, in European Celsius, it's 10. So that's high 40s,
Right.
Low 50s. Yeah.
That's still not something you just want to, well, I don't know, man. I can sleep in the cold. Maybe not that cold.
Since we're on the topic, Milo, I for the last couple of months I haven't had any heat either, and it didn't bother me when it was pleasant outside. But now we're starting to feel the bite of winter coming, and my life has turned into a year in Provence. Only where we live in the other south of France, close to the border of Spain. But it's been a comedy of errors, one thing after another going wrong. It's such a beautiful place and a beautiful property. But I guess it's testing one's resolve, testing one's patience. It brings up all the negativity that you've got in you, to complain about what's going on, or it's real diagnostic of how you're doing inside yourself, when the chips are down. So I've been trying to take it as the learning that it is, and every now and then I crack a little bit, but
I mean, you seem to be in great spirits, all things considered. So we can see the smile. So that is the most important. So we can see that, your spirits are still high. So again, I want to thank you. So before we get into, I definitely want to talk about Elf, but and then obviously your 180-degree, career life change. But so what part of that made you move to France in the first place?
Oh, well, I've been coming back and forth to France. I'm if you look at my last name, which is Lautier, we say Lautier in English. In French, it's Lautier, and it's a French name. And my father was French. I've got this whole side of my family that is French and lives in France. And so, I've had a relationship with this country my whole life. And in the last 6 years, I started going back and forth to France quite a lot. Because I was studying with a spiritual teacher and a yoga master, and he was such a powerful influence on me that I was going back and forth, commuting between where we lived in Canada and France 3 or 4 times a year. And, as I was on that journey, I started thinking, I was spending so much more time with my family here and really renewing those bonds and deepening those relationships. And it felt so good. And it felt like some kind of healing was going on. And I started thinking, well, rather than commuting back and forth across the Atlantic,
right, that's a long
good
flight.
to have a place here, and yeah. And so originally I was just looking for something, simple, little, not a big deal. And then like a crazy person, I saw this gorgeous place when I was here last year, fell in love with it. And, in the midst of all the COVID stuff, there have been so many changes in the world. I don't need to tell you guys that.
Right.
But and because of the work I do now enables me to work online, and I can pretty much work from anywhere. I thought, well, why not just go have a change in life? And my husband, who's an amazing, adventurous person with a huge heart, who will just he decided, okay, let's do it, and he's at a place in his life where, he's older than me and he's had a long career. And he thought, well, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to just, feel what's coming next. And what better way to take a break than to move to a country where he doesn't speak the language and do something completely different, buy a big, sprawling, irresponsible place and live, spend all our money in one place. Put everything on the line. That's how I like to live, put everything on the line, stress to the maximum,
Right.
to squeeze all of the stuff, and to learn and to live, that's what I love to do. So I think I'm putting a really positive spin on it right now after a day with no electricity and 2 months without heat, but
Right.
but that's okay. It's an adventure. It really is an adventure.
So after 5 or 6 years, has he begun to pick up the language yet?
Well, he hasn't been here for 5 or 6 years. We only moved this summer.
Oh, you only moved this. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is all brand new. Totally brand new.
That's
for both of us. And so he'll pick up the language eventually, but he's one of those people who, everywhere he goes, he makes friends, and it doesn't matter about any kind of language barrier.
right.
He's just, when he was touring through India one year, and he was with a tour guide for part of the time, and she gave him a nickname. She said, your name is Bala. And he said, okay, what does that mean? And she said, Bala means the one who is loved by everyone. So, he has that gift of being able to communicate from the heart with all different kinds of people. I've learned a lot from him. So that's a gift. Yeah, it's a blessing.
That's amazing. Now, you said you lived in Canada. So I think that's going to surprise people who, assume that maybe prior to this, because you were in film and television, didn't live in Hollywood.
Oh gosh, I never lived in Hollywood. I spent 1 year living in LA back in 2004. And but the reason we lived in Canada was because we were both employed at the Stratford Festival, Stratford Shakespeare Festival. My background is as a classical actress in the theater.
Right.
Doing Shakespeare and the great writers, that's really my background. And I did some TV and film as well. And some of the things just happened to be things that, got to be well known. But a lot of actors, most actors that I know, probably 90% of actors, they're working in the theater. They're doing things that don't necessarily get a lot of exposure, but they're having a life and a career, as actors. And so we lived in Stratford, Ontario, the home of the Stratford Festival, which is the biggest Shakespeare festival in the world, for 13 years, and worked there. And then the last 5 or 6 years, my life completely took a completely different turn, and I sort of pulled away from all of that, and to do something, I guess you could say related in some ways, but totally different. But yeah, and before that, 17 years in New York City, and as a lot of theater actors, are based out of New York, and
Right.
so I was too, like a lot of them.
So do you remember auditioning for Elf in particular?
Yeah. I
Was
remember
it
it was a lot of fun. I just had a really good feeling about that one, and I went in. Sometimes you just know it's yours, and I went in and I met Jon Favreau, who was there, and I can't remember who the casting director was, but Jon Favreau was the director, and
right.
just it was easy, So I wasn't surprised when it was offered, and I thought, oh, it'll be fun, it'll be fun. Got to shoot at home, and don't have to go anywhere, and it was just another job.
But when did you realize that movie was going to be a big thing? I mean, there's holiday movies every year, but
Yeah,
a lot of them just they don't become anything. When did you realize that, oh my gosh, I'm part of something that's really big?
who knew? I mean, I think it was a progressive dawning, I mean, when we saw them, when it premiered and we went to the premiere, thought, oh, it's good. It's really good,
Right.
It's a fun movie. I felt great being a part of it, but I didn't think any further than that. And then just started playing every year, and then it kind of grew and it grew. It had a following, and then, then they created a musical, and then there were, like books created from it, and the book version, and then it was translated into other languages. There's the French version of Elf, and It's voiced over. It's not my voice when I come on. It's voiced over by a French actress, and I thought, well, they could have asked me. They probably didn't know I was French.
This is true.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then I guess a few years ago, somebody told me that it was in the top 10 or top 5 Christmas movies of all time, along with like It's a Wonderful Life and Miracle on 34th Street. Things like, I was like, what? Oh my God, that's amazing. It's, I mean, it's a nice compliment. It's enjoyable to have been part of something like that, and to have been part of something that's brought a lot of joy to a lot of people. I haven't watched it in a while, but I've always enjoyed it because I love Will Ferrell. He's one of my favorite actors and a really stellar guy too. And so, it's joyful, it's delightful to have just been part of something like that, and it's interesting how I can relate what I do now back to a moment when Elf was released. Actually, I went to see a healer because I've always been sort of in a parallel way involved in growth, personal growth, spiritual growth, self-improvement, all of that stuff. And I was speaking with a healer, and she said to me, Claire, you need to allow yourself to be seen. And suddenly my mind flashed to the fact that my face was on all of these screens across the country at that moment, because the movie had opened nationwide, and there were those brief moments where my face was on the big screen just like that, and it kind of went right through me when she said that, and I thought, well, I am being seen right now, and I've always remembered that moment, because there's what you show on screen, who you appear to be, and the reality of your life, as opposed to the mask that you show, right? The reality of your life, and then beneath that, there's something else, which has nothing to do with anything that you think of as being you, right? So. Anyway, I can count back to that moment, a sort of a marker in a way, that was put in the ground, that I can trace, looking back, connecting the dots back to that moment where I was told that I had to be willing to be seen. And I've said that to many clients since then, because I understand what it means.
Right. That's great. Now I have to ask. I think a lot of people are wondering, because it's one of the most iconic lines in the movie. Were you married at this point, or did your boyfriend, fiance, future husband did everyone, do the, she wants you to stop dragging your feet and commit already?
And commit already. I was married at the time, but I was married to someone else. I was married to my first husband, who's a wonderful guy. But that line, she wants a Tiffany ring, and I can't remember. To stop dragging his feet and commit already.
Right, to stop, right.
Yeah.
Such a great line, and the way it was delivered, and then your face after that. Such a memorable scene in a movie that has very huge memorable scenes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So at what point did you decide to change careers from the entertainment business into the I don't know if it's a life coach, the spiritual coach? I'm sure it wasn't a career change. I'm sure it was more like a life change, and then the career came later. But what sparked the life change?
Well, Milo, I think a lot of people have an image of actors and people like me who have done some movies that, for one reason or another, the movies, got some attention, or, that it's a glamorous life, that, that you meet all kinds of famous people, and that, it's exciting. It's
right.
And sometimes that was true. I've been to the Oscars. I did a short film that was nominated for an Oscar back in 2001 or something. I've met amazing people who are, iconic in the business. I've worked with people like that. Christopher Plummer, David Duchovny, Ricky Gervais, Will Ferrell, of course, among others. And had some amazing experiences, but life is a lot more than that. And I had not really been happy for a while in my career, but it really was not. Now I understand that it really was not about my career. It was that I hadn't connected with something deeper in me than what I could. In other words, my self-esteem and self-image was really tied to my resume, my accomplishments, the perception of me and my career, what I was doing, to some very superficial things. And I couldn't live that way because life is more than that. And because, I wasn't the kind of actor who had, I think if I had had huge success and, starred in a bunch of movies and had a whole, massive Hollywood career, it would have been a lot harder for me to have that realization. It would have been easier to be distracted by, a high level of success and visibility. And I would not have been forced to turn inward the way that I was forced to do. And I didn't do it willingly. I had a lot of resistance, but it felt like I was being pushed off the wheel. It felt like I was being pulled in a different direction, and I didn't want to go. But to be honest, I felt that way very early in my career. I felt drawn to the spiritual path. But I knew that if I said yes to it back then, that that would become my life. And I think my ego was not, was far too strong to surrender to that.
Right.
So I pursued a path that I believed would make me feel whole and complete. But of course, you can't ever get that feeling from something that you do. It's something that you are, and you have to go down into yourself to feel that sense of completeness. It's innate, and we get confused and we think it's out there someplace through another person or through a job or an accomplishment. And I think we should know by now that that's not the case, or we wouldn't have so many people who appeared to be at the pinnacle of success who then, committed suicide.
Right.
Because they realized that ain't it. So the change for me came from the fact that I was increasingly unhappy, dissatisfied, negative, and becoming bitter. And I knew that wasn't really me. And I was in enough emotional and then physical pain. Then I came down with a case of frozen shoulder out of the blue that just was excruciating and lasted about 18 months in 2012. And then that's when I made a break, and I started to earnestly seek where I was being, taken. And so as I mentioned, I came into contact. I was already teaching yoga, and I came into contact with a spiritual teacher in France. Again, seemingly by accident, but these things are never random. We don't live in a random universe. So, but I met him, and it just rocked my world. It had such a powerful impact that I came back, and I walked out of a contract at the theater. Because it just felt wrong. I just felt like I wasn't in the right place, and I needed to make a decision about what I was going to pursue in my life, and so I was never the kind of person who backed out of a contract, who, left other people in the lurch. I always tried not to ever do anything like that, but I really had to make a decision because it was so strong that I just wanted to go back and be near this teacher and to be able to train with him. And so I did that. And it was a total departure from my behavior, from the way that I had conducted myself, but amazingly and very gratifyingly, I was supported in that decision by everyone around me, including the artistic director of the theater, who was so kind and said, I think it's wonderful, and I'll take care of everything. Don't worry about it. And so many people were like, yes, go, Claire, you go do that. And so I spent the next 4 or 5 years in a deep dive. I went through a big transformation, and I'm still, in that transformation, right, because I fully embraced it. And I, sort of withdrew my energy from my previous occupation, except for one project, which I really, which happened, and I said yes to it because it gave me so much joy, and that was to do a musical a new musical that was just being written, and the music that I sang was written just for me, and was a beautiful cast. It was an amazing show. It was called The Hockey Sweater, and we had two different incarnations of it, one in Montreal and one in Ottawa at the National Arts Center, and it was an adaptation of a children's classic that's very well known in Canada. And, that was an experience of total joy. And for the first time in my whole career, I had no attachment. And so right, I could really enjoy it. I wasn't worried about what are people going to think, what are the reviews going to say, blah, blah, blah. All of the stuff that used to really torture me before, that I allowed to torture me before, it was as if it had all just evaporated and it could be easy again, And so right, that was how I said goodbye to that career. I didn't plan to say goodbye to it and say that's the last thing, and I still do sing, and I love to do concerts and sing any chance I get. But it just, the energy in that was spent because it no longer, it was no longer necessary. I learned what I needed to learn from it. I learned how to hold space. I learned how to open myself up to something greater moving through me. I learned how to transmit energy. I learned how to channel light and darkness, and all of that stuff was a wonderful preparation for the work that I was to do next. And I didn't even know what it was at the time. I basically didn't have a job. I wasn't making any money. I have a very wonderful, patient husband who just, blessed me and allowed me to go through that big change, and supported me, in every way. And so then, of course, it felt like that was coming to a conclusion, that training that I went through, and that I was going to have to, what am I doing with my life now? And I knew that I was here to serve. I just didn't know in what way exactly. And so it took me a little bit of time, but I eventually went through coaching training to become a certified life mastery consultant. And now I call myself a spiritual coach. So, and I've created my own programs, and I help people to align, with purpose, with their purpose, to understand the universal laws, and to come into alignment with their true nature, and to drop the mask, to allow themselves to be seen, to drop the mask, and to trust in their own divinity, So that's been my process, which has been the path of grace, and that's what I do now, and I believe that that's why I'm here, is to transmit that and to help people find that within themselves. So that's in a nutshell, kind of a big nutshell, my journey.
Now, I mean, you said you had a great support system and people were like, yes, go out and do that. But prior to, talking to these people in person, were you scared or worried that you might be letting them down? Or, people are like, you're in the entertainment business. There's people clawing and killing, trying to get in, and you're trying to get out.
Totally. I was very scared. I was very worried about what people would think, what people would say about me. I was always very concerned about what other people thought, and that's a real limitation, and I didn't want to let other people down. Obviously, I'd made a commitment to something, and I had to back out. But like I said, there was a great deal of support. And I think when you say yes to what's true in you, you're always supported by the universe, even if on the level of fact, you might receive resistance or resentment from other people, or, opposition. Sometimes that's what you need to overcome, actually. But in my case, it was almost like, the river just turned, and all the flow went in that direction quite easily, once I let go of the idea that I had obligations, and that I had to do something that didn't feel right or natural to me in that moment, at that time. Once I let go of that, and once I allowed myself to say yes to what was really calling me, then in some ways life got a lot easier, and also a lot more challenging, because then you really have to face, you have to face what is in you that needs to be healed, and all of the darkness comes up, and the things that that we all have in us that are coming up for healing. Yeah.
So on your website, it sounds very similar to the quote that's on your website, "Open your life to grace." That It's all those things that you're saying is basically open your life to grace, but with a lot more words. So how, without repeating what you had just said, what does open your life to grace mean to you?
Yes. To me, it's the discovery that you have everything within you already.
Okay. That's
and that life is benevolent.
That's good to that's good to hear. I struggle with that myself, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that do, and you know, hopefully you're able to help them out. Also, a quote that is on your site is being at the end of your spiritual rope.
Yes.
So, I mean, that one hit me rather hard. But can you go into a little bit more detail on when you felt like you were at the end of your spiritual rope?
Yeah, that's happened many times. That's that place that you get to where you just know you can't do things the way that you've been doing them up until now any longer. And it's a powerful moment because that's when you're most likely to surrender. You know, that's when you're most likely to say, I can't do this on my own. Please, God or universe or whatever power that you believe is running things, if you believe in a higher power, please help me, right? And that when when the shell of the ego cracks and you can't you let go of your resistance, because you know the ego is narcissistic at its core, and it believes itself to be the author of all experience. And so, you know, it's in resistance to the truth of your being, which is a blinding light that dissolves the ego in a flash, when it's allowed to finally come through. And so, you know, being at the end of your spiritual rope is that experience of, I can't take it anymore. I've reached the end of this, whatever this is, and I can't. I'm gonna crack. And sometimes it feels like you want to die. Sometimes it feels like you're gonna, you know, blow. But it's a powerful place to be in your life, because that's where you're most susceptible and vulnerable and open to change, and where the grace can enter your life.
Right. That's good to know, and that's good to hear. I want to talk about again on the opening, the front page of your website. At the very top is the latest podcast that you have. So you do your it's called The Grace Space. What made you decide to get into the podcast game? Was that pandemic related, or had you already been doing that prior to not being able to go anywhere?
Yeah, I think I had been doing it prior to. Well, you know, it's a way to teach. It's a way to reach people. And the spoken word, as an actor, as a performer, as a singer, the vibration of the voice and the spoken word is always been really powerful for me. And I believe that it transmits energy. And so it's a way to reach into people's hearts, beyond the actual meaning of words. You know, it has a vibration. And so I enjoy the experience of podcasting. I love to teach, and I love talking to people, like-minded people. And so it just seemed like a good fit, you know, a natural fit. And also, you can podcast in your pajamas and you don't have to wear makeup.
This is true. This is true. I have to like get dressed to do the video. I should just stick to the podcast format only and just do it in my PJs.
Yeah. Well, also, I think, you know, if you're not on camera, for me, it makes me less self-conscious. I think coming from the background that I come from,
100%.
You know what I mean? Like this idea that
absolutely
having to put on makeup and look good and stuff like that. Like, I don't need any more of that in my life. I'm coming to you from my car, Milo.
Right.
No makeup, and having cried much of the day because, you know, I feel very challenged by my circumstances right now. I had to let it out, you know. And I thought, oh man, I'm a mess and I'm going to have to go on camera. And I thought, I'm just going to go as I am. Milo's cool. He'll understand. Yes. And, you know, I'd much rather share who I am authentically then I mean, there's no point in putting up a mask anymore. I just don't like to, that would defeat the purpose of everything that I do and help people with. So.
Right. Meanwhile, like I came on like an hour before we started to make sure the lighting is good, that this is good, that, like the hair is okay.
You look
No,
great,
I
Milo.
understand what you mean 100%. And putting on an image and, I get it 100%.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about a program that just the wording of it really stuck. I mean, it really stuck with me. And then reading the description, I feel it here, and that is From Burnout to Bliss. Let's talk about that, because I understand burnout, and I think a lot of people do.
Yeah. Oh, especially right now, Milo. People are, burnout was a term that was associated with work for a long time, but I really associate it with life now, life burnout. That's that feeling of being at the end of your spiritual rope, well, I started noticing a trend in the people who were coming to me for consultations. That word was being used a lot, that was the experience that people were having, mostly women. It just so happens that most of my clients are women, although I do have a few men. It's just, I think because women tend to, with their children, or, they tend to give 110%. They give to other people. They don't think about themselves, whether it's giving to your children or your family or your community or your work, or your job. And I know that men have their own version of that, but I started noticing, this is really the stress. And so I got curious about, well, where is the stress coming from actually? And I started to understand that the stress, even though it looks like it's caused by outer circumstances, it's not. It's due to the pressure, the inner pressure of unprocessed emotional energy. So we all have these feelings from childhood, that according to our own personal programming, have been suppressed or repressed, which is even stronger, or that we act out, or that we escape from, right? And none of those ways of dealing with the feelings are constructive. It actually just continues to build the pressure. And then the mind looks for situations in the outside world to release a little bit of that pressure. So you get stressed, and you say, it's my job, it's my relationship, it's the fact that I've got no heat and no electricity, whatever it is, that you think, oh, it's stressing me out, right? But that's not stressing. That is not the source of stress. It is the trigger, but it's not the source, right? So the source is within, it's inward, and the source of it is that emotional pressure that's been built up over many, many years, and it makes people sick, it makes people depressed, it makes people feel tired. It really is, it kills. It's a killer. And so I saw a real need to address directly the emotional energy, not by talking about things, but by processing the emotional energy itself, not going into the mind and about stories and this happened to me and that happened to me, not the route of therapy, which has its place, of course. And I was in therapy myself for many years. But as a yogi, and in my more recent work, and because I learned as an actor how to work with emotional energy, I started to understand that we can actually work with that energy directly. And that is the equivalent of, if you're on your computer, you've got folders and you've got files, and you take all your files and you put them in a folder, right?
Right.
When you work with, that's what thoughts and feelings are. Feelings are the folder, and thoughts and stories are the files. And so, you can process those files one by one, but if you've got thousands of files inside a folder, it's going to take you a long time to process all those files and drag them to the trash, right? You might as well just take the whole folder and drag it to the trash, right? And then it goes poof. And that's how it is with emotional energy. So I discovered that we can work with and process a great deal if we go straight through and we penetrate the emotional layer. And it's actually the simplest thing in the world. It's just that we were never taught how to do that, and we can do it. So my program, From Burnout to Bliss, is based on letting go of and releasing what we don't need anymore, processing that emotional energy, learning a simple way to do that so that we become more aware of what we're going through, and we can surrender it, we can release it, we can actually let it go, and it dissolves. And then all of this energy that was pent up in trying to keep that stuff down is available for creativity. It's available for what you want it to be available for, right? And you start to reveal your natural state, of which is blissful. That's our natural state, right? So it's my way of contributing to the elevation of consciousness on this planet and the elevation of people's vibration on this planet. And so it's an 8-week process that'll teach you how to work with that energy in a really concise and structured way through a practice of yoga and breath and meditation, and learning some pretty important spiritual laws that everybody should learn, everybody should understand in order to operate in alignment with the way that things are in this universe, instead of swimming against the current all the time, which is why people feel so burned out. So yeah, that's a program that I created, and that's had a lot of success for the people who are going through it.
That's amazing. I want to change gears real quick. I want to dive into no stress, and that is, as we get to our first of our mini games here. It's called the Milo Beasley Show. Frequently asked questions. These are going to be the same 5 questions that I ask to every single one of my guests. It's just the first thing that pops into your head. No stress. Don't stress about this. All right. So question number 1. Who is your first celebrity crush?
Fox Mulder. David Duchovny.
And then you got to work with him.
I got to work with him. He's a great guy.
Was that awkward? Were you like, oh man, he's right over there?
No, when I met him, I was like, I know that guy. He's like an old friend.
It's a good way to look at it. Question number 2. What is your guilty pleasure song?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
I like it. I was doing, not that I sing. I don't sing, but I was hosting karaoke the other day, and that one's, somebody inevitably always picks that one. And so it was a good thing it wasn't me. Let's just say that. All right. This is if you had to. Let's say if your life depended on it, would you rather fight one giant duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I think I'd rather fight the giant duck.
Fight the giant duck.
Well, because, a giant duck doesn't have as much dexterity, and I'd probably be able to run away from it, outrun it, tire it out, something like that. Yeah.
Nobody's ever said like run and tire the thing out. That's a good point. Question number 4. What is your favorite movie quote?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
It's a good one. And one that nobody has ever said on the show before. That's a good one. And it's such a classic.
Oh.
All right. Now, this one, you might have to dive into a little bit of ego. It's a fill in the blank. If blank was an Olympic sport, I would win a gold medal.
Making my mom laugh.
That's a very important quality to have.
Yeah.
Because like we talked about stress, moms can get stressed. So being able to take that out and make her laugh, it's very, very key.
Yeah, my brother and I we tag team that one. I think he would win a gold medal too. We'd have to share that medal.
All right. It's better than my last guest said farting. So at least.
Well, that's a close second,
That's so you would be silver medal to his gold medal. Okay, guys.
But I hope I wouldn't be standing downwind.
It's true. Well, if you're on the medal podium, I don't think you want to be second, because that would. All right. And then the second of our 2 mini games is called the Milo Beasley Show Top 5. I'm going to ask you a random question. You're going to give me your top 5, no particular order. This one's going to be easy. It's Christmas time. Top 5 favorite Christmas movies.
Oh, well, of course, Elf has got to be in there.
Right.
Love Actually. I guess Love Actually would be my first one. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll put Elf in second place. And then, It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life. And, I like Bad Santa.
I just watched Bad Santa 2 the other day.
Yeah. Bad Santa. And The Grinch. The original cartoon.
The original cartoon, right, with Charles Ravencroft.
Yeah.
That's a good list. So I have to ask, how obviously Christmas here in the States super commercialized. How is Christmas in France?
Well, it's pretty commercialized here too. But I think you can participate in that to the degree that you want to. There's a lot of traditions here that are beautiful. They have the Christmas markets, and so they set up all of these little they look like little cabins, wooden cabins in the downtown. So, in the centre-ville, which is the center of town. And, in France, because it's so old here, things were built around like a church, and then they got bigger. And, so there's a center of town almost everywhere you go. And the Christmas market is usually there. And so in a town about 40 minutes away where I'm heading tonight, they have a Christmas market, and they have two, not one, but 2 ice skating rinks set up outside, and rides for children and roasted chestnuts and things like that. So you can wander through the Christmas market. I think it's a beautiful, those are beautiful traditions. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, before we wrap up, where can folks find you on the social medias or your website?
Well, I'm on Facebook. My Facebook group is called From Burnout to Bliss with Claire Lautier. You can find me on my website at clairelautier.com. You can
we have stuff. We have it down there. We have Instagram.
Yeah.
We have Instagram, Facebook,
there it is.
website. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it all. You got it.
We try to be helpful here.
Yeah. I'm on all the the usual. It can be found in the usual places. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you for spending your evening with me, even if it was in your car on a cold December night. Yeah. So again, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Oh, just that it was a pleasure, really a pleasure. You've got such a great energy, and I can see why people love to watch your show. So I want to thank you, Milo, and I just want to give a heartfelt greetings to all of you who watch this show. I send you the light of the heart at this time of year, and I can feel you guys, and I'm sending you lots of love.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody watching at home or on your phones, wherever you may be listening on the podcast. Don't forget, subscribe, because that's how we judge people nowadays, by subscriber numbers or something. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.